The transfer is approved in less than 5 minutes. No debate, no vote. The account is labeled Missions Growth Reserve, and the explanation feels righteous enough to move fast. The promise was clear. This money will not sit. It will multiply. It will return stronger, ready to fund God's work without begging the congregation again. Statements arrive showing steady growth. Another ministry confirms they were paid out on time. A pastor calls it answered prayer. What no one sees is the rotation underneath. Funds sliding between accounts, new donations filling old obligations, a system that depends on belief staying ahead of math. Questions feel uncomfortable, doubt feels dangerous. By the time someone finally asks for proof, the money is already committed elsewhere, dressed as progress. This is not reckless greed. It is quiet trust used as leverage, a familiar fraud wearing spiritual language. And once it starts, stopping it means admitting faith was used against itself. Chapter 1. The Promise and the Pressure. The invitation almost never sounds like an investment pitch. It sounds like ministry alignment, a shared burden, a practical solution wrapped in spiritual language. The first contact usually happens inside trusted spaces where skepticism feels out of place. A leadership retreat, a donor luncheon, a private meeting between pastors who have prayed together and served side by side. The proposal is framed as stewardship. Money sitting idle is described as a missed opportunity. Reserves should work just as hard as volunteers. The concept is presented as conservative, responsible, and faith-aligned. This is not speculation. This is impact finance. Kingdom growth with accountability. Numbers are introduced carefully, not extravagant, not suspicious. 8% annually, sometimes 10. Enough to matter, not enough to trigger alarm. The emphasis stays on purpose, not profit. Returns are described as a tool, not a goal, a way to stabilize ministry budgets and reduce dependence on constant fundraising. Early participants are often ministries under pressure, but not in crisis. Churches with shrinking attendance, charities reliant on grants that arrive late, faith-based organizations stretched thin by rising costs. They have reserves, but no margin for error. Predictable growth offers relief. Planning becomes easier, anxiety eases. The paperwork looks professional. Legal language is present but dense. Most leaders skim. There are references to compliance, structure, and ethical safeguards. Sometimes there is a board, sometimes a faith-based advisory council. Titles convey legitimacy. The operation feels bigger than any one person. Statements arrive promptly. Monthly updates show interest earned. Graphs trend upward. A small payout is issued to one ministry, then another. Testimonials circulate quietly. A board member mentions success during a meeting. A pastor references it as an example of wise stewardship. Confidence builds quickly because nothing appears wrong. The system rewards early trust. Those first payments do not come from returns, they come from new money. But at this stage, no one knows that. Requests for detail are met with patience and deflection. Strategies are explained at a high level. Ethical trade finance, short-term lending, real assets. The explanations are vague but plausible. When pressed, leaders are reminded that complex financial structures are difficult to summarize. Too much transparency could confuse donors. Pressure enters gradually. Leaders are encouraged to increase their position. Others are invited to join. Expansion is framed as collective benefit. The more participants, the stronger the pool. The language shifts from optional to responsible. Why would a faithful ministry hold back? Board members who hesitate feel isolated. Asking for audited financials feels excessive. Requesting bank confirmations feels distrustful. Nobody wants to be the person who slows momentum. Nobody wants to appear faithless. The moral framing tightens without being spoken outright. Trust is praised. Unity is emphasized. Doubt is associated with fear. Fear is associated with spiritual weakness. These ideas are not stated directly. They do not need to be. The culture enforces them quietly. Some leaders sense discomfort, but suppress it. The statements look good. Others are participating. No one wants to trigger panic over a feeling. The pressure to proceed outweighs the pressure to verify. As more money flows in, expectations rise. Payouts must continue. Statements must remain positive. The system becomes dependent on constant inflow. Growth is no longer optional. It is necessary. By the end of the first year, the network is sizable. Multiple ministries are involved. The operation feels established. Pulling out now would mean admitting error. Staying in feels safer. What began as stewardship has become obligation. The promise must be maintained, and the pressure to keep it intact has only just begun. Chapter 2: The Loop and the Lie. The first real problem is timing. A ministry expects a payout on the first of the month. The statement shows it clearly. Interest accrued, balance updated. The treasurer checks the account. Nothing arrives. A day passes. Then two. An email is sent. The response comes back calm and reassuring. A processing delay, a banking issue. It happens sometimes. No one panics. The explanation feels reasonable. Faith leaders are used to delays. Grants arrive late, donations fluctuate. This feels no different. The payment clears 3 days later. Relief sets in. Trust is reinforced, not weakened. The delay is forgotten. What no one sees is what happened behind the scenes. Another ministry made a fresh contribution that same week. Those funds were rerouted to cover the payout. The books were adjusted to keep balances clean. The system held. This is how it works, not through theft in the traditional sense, but through rotation. Money never sits long enough to generate real returns. It moves, constantly, from one account to another, from one promise to the next. The operator understands the risk early. The structure depends on inflow. As long as new money enters faster than withdrawals exit, the illusion holds. Growth becomes survival. Accounting practices adapt to the need. Internal transfers are labeled reserves. Payouts are framed as distributions from pooled performance. Statements are generated based on expected returns, not cash on hand. The numbers look right on paper. They have to. Staff who handle the books begin to notice patterns. Accounts that should grow remain flat. Transfers circle back within days. Funds pass through multiple entities with similar names. The complexity feels intentional. When questions are raised internally, they are met with reassurance. This is normal. This is how large funds operate. You are only seeing part of the picture. The explanation carries weight because of who delivers it. Often, it is a respected figure, a founder, a senior leader, someone with spiritual authority. Their confidence quiets concern. Their reputation becomes collateral. As pressure increases, communication tightens. Financial updates become less detailed. Meetings shift focus toward vision and mission. Questions about numbers are redirected toward outcomes. Look at the impact. Look at what God is doing. Spiritual language becomes a tool of control. Unity is emphasized repeatedly. Division is warned against. Doubt is described as corrosive. Staff are reminded that internal conflict harms the mission. Some employees push back anyway. A finance manager requests bank confirmations. A board liaison asks for third-party audits. The response is sharp. You do not understand the structure. You are creating unnecessary alarm. In some cases, those voices are removed. Contracts are not renewed. Roles are redefined. Access to accounts is limited. The message is clear without being stated. Stop asking. Regulatory oversight offers little protection. Religious organizations occupy a gray space. Donations are not always treated as securities. Agreements are framed carefully. Language avoids guarantees while implying certainty. The structure exploits the gap between faith and finance. As long as payouts continue, no one outside the inner circle intervenes. Ministries receiving returns praise the system publicly. Testimonials attract new participants. The loop feeds itself, but growth accelerates pressure. Each new ministry adds obligation. Each reinvestment compounds future payouts. The math becomes unforgiving. The operator feels it first. The margin shrinks. Timing becomes tighter. A single large withdrawal could break the system. New recruitment becomes urgent. The pitch grows more insistent. Opportunities are framed as limited. Early access is emphasized. Ministries are encouraged to increase allocations quickly. Waiting is framed as missing God's timing. Some leaders hesitate. Economic conditions tighten. Donations slow. Cash reserves thin. One ministry requests a full withdrawal to cover unexpected expenses. The request cannot be met cleanly. Delays begin to stack. Explanations lose consistency. One ministry is told funds are locked temporarily. Another hears about a restructuring. A third is promised partial payment. Behind the scenes, accounts are drained to buy time. Smaller payouts are prioritized to prevent alarm. Larger withdrawals are stalled. Staff see the collapse forming. Transfers become frantic. Records are adjusted late at night. Emails are drafted and deleted. The stress is visible. Silence becomes the final tactic. Calls go unanswered. Meetings are postponed. Leaders issue broad statements about challenges in prayer. Ministries begin comparing experiences. The pattern emerges: the same delays, the same explanations, the same missing funds. What was once unthinkable becomes undeniable. There were no returns, only rotation, only belief sustaining the system longer than math ever could. The lie was not just financial, it was moral. Trust was used as insulation, faith was used as cover, and by the time the truth surfaces, the damage is already locked in. The loop breaks not with a confession, but with exhaustion. There is no more money to move, no new faith to leverage fast enough. And when it stops everywhere at once. Chapter 3: The Cost and the Aftermath. The collapse does not arrive with a warning siren. It arrives as absence. Emails stop being returned. Scheduled calls are postponed and then quietly removed from calendars. Ministries log into accounts and see balances frozen or missing. The language used to explain the silence is careful at first. Temporary disruption, administrative review, prayerful pause. Then the truth surfaces in fragments. A board chair from one ministry calls another. Both are waiting on payouts. Both have heard different explanations. A finance officer compares notes with a former staff member who left months earlier. The pieces align fast once people start talking. There is no pool of growing assets, there never was. What looked like growth was timing. What looked like returns were transfers. The reserves are gone. The impact is immediate. Ministries that relied on expected payouts cannot meet payroll. Programs are suspended mid-cycle. Outreach plans are canceled. Staff members who believed their work was secure are laid off with little notice. The damage spreads outward. Families lose income, communities lose services, food distribution slows. Counseling programs shut down, shelters reduce capacity. The harm lands far from the original decision makers. Boards convene emergency meetings. Questions turn inward and sharp. Who approved this? What documents were reviewed? Why were warnings dismissed? Minutes are revisited. Emails are reread. The realization settles in that the signs were visible but inconvenient. Leaders face congregations and donors with prepared statements that cannot answer the most basic question. How did this happen? Apologies sound thin without restitution. Explanations feel hollow without accountability. Some leaders step down, others stay, determined to repair trust. None escape scrutiny. Trust once broken does not repair on command. Legal consequences follow uneven paths. In some cases, authorities open investigations. Financial records are seized. Interviews are conducted. The language shifts from ministry to misconduct. Allegations are separated from proven facts. Proceedings move slowly. Civil lawsuits emerge where criminal cases do not. Ministries seek recovery through courts. Settlements are discussed. The reality becomes clear. There is little to recover. Funds move through layered accounts, leave thin trails. Assets were never sufficient to cover obligations. Time compounds the loss. Legal fees drain remaining resources. Public association with scandal deters donors. Even ministries not directly involved feel the chill. Faith-based giving declines across networks touched by the story. The reputational damage outlives the financial loss. Congregants question leadership competence. Donors hesitate to give unrestricted funds. Oversight becomes a demand, not a courtesy. Some ministries survive by shrinking. Others merge. Some close entirely. Years of work vanish under the weight of one trusted decision. Internal reckoning follows. Boards rewrite policies. External audits become mandatory. Financial literacy training is introduced for leadership. Investment language is banned from donation appeals. Reserves are locked into low-risk accounts with strict controls. These reforms come too late for many. They exist as warnings etched into policy, written in the ink of loss. The broader faith community wrestles with the narrative. Leaders fear the story will be used to discredit charitable work. Others argue silence allowed the damage to spread. The tension is unresolved. What remains undeniable is the structural failure. Faith was treated as a substitute for verification. Moral authority replaced financial controls. Community trust was leveraged where accountability should have stood. This was not a single bad actor exploiting ignorance. It was a system built on deference, a culture where questioning felt disloyal, where unity was prized over scrutiny, where belief moved faster than evidence. The lesson is uncomfortable because it demands separation. Faith and finance cannot occupy the same blind spot. Purpose does not exempt process. Good intentions do not reduce risk. For some leaders, the experience reshapes ministry permanently. Transparency becomes non negotiable, decision making slows, enthusiasm is tempered by documentation. The cost of caution is accepted as necessary. For donors, the loss hardens behavior. Restricted giving increases, oversight becomes expected. Trust must be earned repeatedly. For communities harmed by the collapse, recovery is uneven. Some rebuild with new leadership and painful humility. Others never regain momentum. The work they did remains unfinished. Faith in Phantom Returns does not end with a courtroom verdict or a clean moral resolution. It ends with residue, suspicion, policy changes born of regret, relationships altered permanently. The final cost is measured not only in lost money, but in lost certainty. The certainty that faith based work is inherently safe, the certainty that trust alone is sufficient. What remains is a harder truth. Faith without structure is vulnerable. Trust without verification is exploitable. And when belief is used as cover, the damage reaches far beyond balance sheets. That is the aftermath, quiet, lingering, and carried by those who believed they were doing good until doing good was no longer enough.